Welcome back to the Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. Here's your host, Bishop Larry Gaiters.
Thank you so much, Brother Andrew. Call us in right now, 609-614-3801. Again, beloved, 609-614-3801. You're listening to your host and moderator tonight, Bishop Larry Gaiters, on the Life Radio Network, 92.9 FM, 1460 AM here in New York City, New York. You can listen to us live online right now at liferadionj.com, liferadionj.com, and just click on Listen Live. Then you can listen live to us right now anywhere throughout the world. Also, you can email us your questions right now at Global Spiritual Revolution Radio at yahoo.com. Again, quickly, beloved, Global Spiritual Revolution Radio at yahoo.com. I'm telling you, I'm so excited to have our third guest on for the very first time here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. I came into contact with this powerful man of God through one of my Twitter followers, and this person said, Bishop, you have got to get in contact with this great man of God. And this great man of God has a powerful podcast series entitled the Bards of War Podcast. Bards of War Podcast. And just go on YouTube right now, type in Bards of War Podcast, capital BARDS, Bards of War Podcast. Not just his voice is so anointed, but the way he schematically structures his broadcast, his podcast, is so different. And he has a brand that God has given him. He is a soldier of fortune. He is a true patriot. He's a man's man, just like our previous two guests, and that is the Honorable Mr. Scott Kesterson. Brother Scott, thank you so much, sir, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us for the very first time on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio.
Well, Bishop, I have to tell you, I am honored and humbled by the introduction, so thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I think God works in amazing ways of bringing us together, and as you mentioned, it's as we know how random Twitter is just by function. When we see something like this, there's no randomness in it, is there? It's pretty amazing. So I'm very blessed to be here. So thank you very much.
I am so very honored. Thank you so much. And the honor is ours, man of God. And we're so excited to be given the opportunity to be sitting at your feet as well as we unpack the topic, the dismantling of the Luciferian left. Again, beloved, the dismantling of the Luciferian left here and only here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. And to all of our Global Spiritual Revolution partners, Pastor Scott, Brother Scott is going to give out information how you can donate to his ministry, as well as we have Pastor Greg Scott, Greg Young, on the line with us. He'll be with us for another 8 to 10 minutes, and he's going to give out information, a link how you can sow financially into the Chosen Generation Radio. All right, 609-614-3801. And always remember to our Global Spiritual Revolution partners, destroy the image of the deep, and you will break the reality of the state. Always remember that. Destroy the image of the deep, and you will break the reality of the state, the deep state. Man of God, have you ever in your life, have witnessed a Luciferian psyop, from a party that calls themselves the champions of the people, the Democratic Party? Have you ever in your life have been an eyewitness of something that is so demonic, something that is so filthy, something that is so full of darkness? What is the mind of God sharing with your heart, man of God, as we're dissecting this Luciferian conspiracy bringing down a true president, such as our great president, President Donald J. Trump?
Well, I think the one thing that always strikes me is, and this is a bigger picture than just a specific incident, but it's the continued, when I stumble into this, it's more of the awakening of when people start to come across and realize there's something wrong, and when they reach across that aisle to approach people of faith, to approach a movement of support with President Trump, they're anticipating, they've been conditioned to be hateful. They've been conditioned to strike out violently, and they're completely on the defensive and offensive simultaneously for that. And yet when they approach it, they literally don't know what to do. And it's just something I advised my followers the other day, was to be very careful right now in discerning between trolls and shills and those that are seeking, because they look very similar. And when we get into this place right now, there's so much awakening happening that people will come across and be very aggressive with you. And yet as they start to talk, they'll say things like, all I'm trying to do is learn. And you need to look for keywords like this, because they have been so heavily conditioned that they literally don't know what to do, and yet they're feeling that everything is wrong on their side. And so this to me is a real indicator of this grip, this dark grip that they have on their souls and their hearts, of making them believe that there is such an evil on the good side, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. And Pastor Young, you can jump in here as well. Why is it for the very first time, and I guess this has been going on for decades, but why is it that we are witnessing a increase, a height of what we call the culture of victimhood? And I'm going to start with Pastor Young, because he has to leave here, and then we're going to go to Brother Scott. Victimhood. Why is it that the left is perpetuating victimhood? What are the benefits that the left gets out of teaching, propagating a culture of victimhood or victimology? Why is the left pushing this? What is God showing you, Pastor Young, in this regard?
Well, thank you, Bishop, and welcome to Scott. I don't know if you remember, but we did a few things with Kilroy way back in the day.
We sure did. I didn't realize you were on the call. Hello, Greg. How are you doing?
Hey, man. It's good to hear your voice, buddy. It's good to hear your voice.
Yeah.
Scott is
absolutely
an
nice.
Incredible guy. Incredible
Wonderful
guy.
Yes, he is. Yes.
Yep, incredible guy. We did some really neat stuff years back. And man,
yes, God.
another sign that it's a small world, huh?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'll tell you, is it ever? That's pretty amazing.
Wow.
I'm actually laughing here. The probability of that happening on this one. And I have to be honest, the minute that you... Go ahead, Bishop. I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off.
What are the percentages of this happening, of you two reconnecting again? Go ahead, Brother Scott. Forgive me for cutting you off.
No, not at all. I'm sitting here laughing at just that exact thing. Is that I hadn't realized that Pastor Young was on the line, and here I am, and I'm like,
wow.
wait.
Yeah,
it's amazing. I hope you've recovered well from your accident. Yes.
You know, I'm still recovering, brother. It was it was quite catastrophic. Thank you so much for asking. And but you know, I'm in a wheelchair, but I'm still fighting the good fight, brother, and grateful to be alive.
Yeah.
God bless you, and thank you.
Glory to God.
Thanks.
Victimology, gentlemen, we're going to start with Pastor Young and go to Brother Scott. Why are we seeing this increase of victimhood or victimology in this 21st century?
Well, remember last half hour we talked about the shift from our freedoms and our liberties come from God, which is liberating, okay? Freedom and liberty coming from God is liberating because it sets you free to be able to obtain and pursue and obtain your purpose and your value and your gifting and your dreams and all of those wonderful things that God sets us free to be able to do. Now you remove that and you put us under the government, and now well, I'm no longer free. It's whatever the government gives me. I'm now entitled, and I am a victim of something that has happened or someone here is doing for me, and I need the government to step in as arbitrator, right? And so it is literally a new form of slavery, and it ties into debt, it ties into energy, it ties into business, it ties into licensing, it ties into everything that we do every single day as we have surrendered to Washington, D.C., rather than maintaining our constitutional Declaration of Independence, which is a declaration of freedom and liberty, restriction on government, liberty for the people. We have crisscrossed that.
Victimology, Brother Scott. Is this a psyop? Why is the left so enamored to use victimhood or the psyop of victimology, specifically through Black America? Is it a spirit? Is it a demon? What is the mind of God showing you as we are unpacking this Luciferian plan from the left?
Well, Bishop, I think what I really have been looking at, and what's coming a lot through the work that I've been doing and my prayers, and I'm very close with God, is really revealing that something I find that is very consistent across the readings of the Bible, but is something I think we miss, and that is that God has given us two primary gifts, which is sovereignty and free will, and those are extremely powerful gifts. And the victimhood takes that away, because part of coming to God is that we have to come to Him by choice. That's the free will and our sovereign will. And only then, when we come back to God, do we accomplish, or is He able to share and give us the full range of His reward, His gift, if you will. I don't want to make it sound too material, but I mean the full gift of who we are doesn't happen until we come back through our sovereignty and free will. So with that, part of that is we're using His. The other part of that is we're using the gifts that He's given us to then also tithe forward with goodwill. And so when you start to create victimhood, a couple of things get derailed right away. One is that our sovereignty, we give our sovereignty up. And I think this is a very critical piece here. You cannot take that which is not given. To me, this is one of the most profound things that came to me in prayer one day. And it's a word that when you take that phrase and you think about everything in our world, you think about advertising, you think about the manipulation of the way that they want you to be a victim. What they're doing is the Luciferian left is working people to a point where they're willingly giving up their sovereignty, they're willingly giving up their free will. Those are things God gave to us to take care of and manage. And in doing so, we're giving away willingly, because it can't be taken from us unless we give it away. And this, to me, is one of the most seditious aspects of the Luciferian left, is it's constantly manipulating and twisting. And I'll just close with this one example, which is abortion. We have come to a place where they have, and it's even in there, it's a choice. It's a choice to kill a life. So by free will and your sovereignty, you're choosing to destroy God's child, and literally giving away, you're giving it up to the left for their own worship.
This is so evil, and you hit a nerve with me, Brother Scott, and let me know, Pastor Young, when you have to leave. But the thing is, as we're dissecting the Luciferian left, and our first guest that we had, Pastor Greg Locke, we talked about Nancy the Ripper Pelosi. All right, ripping up the document, right, President Trump's speech, and that was not the only time in governmental history that happened. The first Speaker of the House, right, Frederick Muhlenberg, had tore up in half President George Washington's speech because President Washington wanted to abolish slavery. Go figure. And then you had Emma Lazarus, a young woman in 1875, along with a 16-year-old girl, Emma Goldman, who wanted to overthrow the United States of America. They marched in the middle of Harlem in 1875 and ripped up just copies of the Constitution of the United States, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights. And mind you, both of these women, Emma Lazarus and Emma Goldman, were high-ranking communists and socialists, all right, and fascists who both wanted to overthrow the United States government. Emma Lazarus wanted to replace the Constitution with a new Constitution called the New Colossus. Okay? And Emma Lazarus is the face of the Statue of Liberty, Brother Scott. I kid you not. And I think I brought this up on Pastor Greg on your show a month ago. So saying that to say this, what boldness, and you said something, Brother Scott, concerning the father of Nancy Pelosi. Expose this as the mind of God is leading you here tonight, sir.
Yes. So Nancy Pelosi's father is her name is D'Alessandro, and her father is D'Alessandro Jr. And what's important is he is tied to the mafia. That was one of the many of the big mafia hitmen within New York, and so he was then mayor of Baltimore, which people praise. But what's very interesting is there's some strong indications that Nancy Pelosi's part of the sort of the inner circle of the black robe. It's not the black robe regiment. It's the kind of the black mafia that sits around the Pope. And there's still a lot of research I'm doing on this, but it's not accidental that she continually flies to Italy. Right, especially every time she finishes a bill, she flies to Italy. She seems to also be part of a witch's coven, and this gets into a lot of the rituals that she's actually doing. If I can just add to this, it's very interesting. There's two pastors that have now reported the exact thing from the State of the Union, and they both talked about two things actually. One was the darkness they had never in their life. Two independent reports recently in the last few days. They had never felt so much evil against so much good in a room. And the other part, which I found just disturbing, was they talked about how when they introduced the young black girl and when they introduced the Tuskegee Airmen, that everyone wearing white was hissing. I mean, that's just evil. I don't even know how to put it other than that.
Oh my
it's
God.
Just dark.
I don't understand, Brother Scott, and Pastor Young. I know you have to leave, but I don't understand what President Trump is. He's done more in 3 years. Correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, than any president. I love President Ronald Wilson Reagan. Than any president, at least in my lifetime, and he will go down as the greatest president in modern U.S. history. Probably more greater than Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. You would think, Pastor Young, that a lot of the policies, with prison reform, giving African Americans and people a second chance at life. President Obama never did that. Right. Putting billions of dollars in these urban areas, and then you have the left and the Black Caucus, who a lot of them are members of the Black Boule Seeker Society. Scott, you probably know that. That's another topic for another day, where they are the protectors of the system. But I don't want to get involved in that. But why are we seeing this, man of God? The utter hatred for a man that's willing to help even African Americans with programs that they themselves, that you would think that they would support.
Well, if I could jump in, I think relative to what you were both talking about as far as the evil is concerned, and I think that's what's driving this. You watch what's happened with President Trump. President Trump, going back to September of 2016, I know I've talked with Paula White. I've had her on my program. I've talked with Ari Spiro. I've talked with others that are very close to the president. He has had a personal spiritual revival, and he is moving closer to God. And you could see it in what he said in his acquittal speech that he gave. First of all, where every time that he does those, look at how selfless he is in thanking nearly everyone in the room. Most of his talk is giving thanks for the people in the room. That's number one. That's the sign of humility. Number two, he said, listen, I've made mistakes. Now, David Brody has followed Donald Trump for years and years and years, and he said never had he ever heard Donald Trump say, I make mistakes. That is the sign of someone who is in a close proximity and relationship to God, because they know they can admit their faults, admit those things, knowing they have a heavenly Father who's already covered them. It's already taken care of, and they are perfectly comfortable in who they are in that relationship.
And you know, and Pastor Young, on that note, thank you so much for being with us, my friend, and we're going to have you back on the air with us. We love you in the Lord, and you and I will definitely talk later tonight. So that was Pastor Greg Young, all the way from Dallas, Texas. He is the host of the nationally syndicated radio talk show Chosen Generation Radio. They're in Dallas, Texas. And how can people give financially into your ministry and into Chosen Generation Radio?
Well, they can give at chosengenerationradio.com, and really I would ask not so much for the radio program, but I'm now overseeing nearly 170 pastors in India. We have an orphanage there. We have widows we're trying to take care of there. We are my pastors there in Punjab, in Jammu, and Kashmir are under death threat right now by Muslims, Sikh, and Hindus. And I would just ask, we're trying to support them as best as we can. So anything you can give would be very helpful. And in leaving also, I just want to say, Scott, it's so good to hear your voice, brother. I'm so happy for you. And please reach out to me. I would love to hear from you and love to get reconnected. God bless you all. Thank you so much for having me. You are so gracious, Bishop. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm telling you, man of God, you are such a dear friend. We love you in Christ, and it was an honor sitting at your feet. And that was Pastor Greg Young, all the way from Dallas, Texas, chosengenerationradio.com, chosengenerationradio.com. We have with us, I'm telling you, a powerful man of God, a man's man. We have a man of God whose podcast is so unique. And Brother Scott, you have such a gift of speech, a great articulation. And to all of our Global Spiritual Revolution partners, follow Brother Scott Kesterson on Twitter. And what is your Twitter address, man of God? Give that up real quick.
At Bards of War, BARDS of War, at Bards of War. Everything is on YouTube at Bards of War, on BitChute at Bards of War, and on Twitter at Bards of War. So it's very easy to find. And I appreciate the compliments, so thank you very much. I'm very humbled.
Absolutely. And thank you for that revelation concerning Nancy Pelosi's father. That I did not know. All right. Dismantling the Luciferian left here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio with Mr. Scott Kesterson of bardsofwarfilm.com, bardsofwarfilm.com, and go to their YouTube channel, Bards of War Podcast, Bards of War Podcast. Subscribe to it. And near the end of the broadcast, this great man of God is going to give out information how you can financially support him, his movie project, his ministry, which is so powerful. Kobe Bryant, man of God. So many people have been asking me concerning his death. Man of God, I personally believe that his death was not by accident, no random. But what has God shown you as to what was Kobe involved in that put him in a compromising situation for him to be taken out, number one? And number two, could it be that he was also involved within a battle, a legal battle against the pharmaceutical industries here in the United States? What is the mind of God showing you as to the Kobe Bryant conspiracy?
Well, I think this is very interesting. I'm still unpacking this a bit, and we talked briefly on Twitter about this, Bishop, and I do have a forthcoming podcast which I'll share with you as soon as it's out. But what I'm finding here is a very interesting series of connections and rabbit holes when we follow Kobe Bryant. One is he is involved. We look at some of his financial things, and we take his popularity in China can't be discounted, because he was the most popular basketball player in China. So even though he wasn't there, he was also present this last fall when they had that blow up between the Lakers, NBA, and China, when their tweet went out. It wasn't Kobe Bryant's tweet, but the Lakers were playing when the tweet went out defending the Hong Kong protesters. So those are kind of just some subtle indicators or interesting connectors. The other thing I find very interesting is his nickname is the Black Mamba. Now, when we get into occult issues, we know the snake is very prevalent within the occult, but the mamba is truly lethal within that. It's like it's the symbol of almost a god. And I do believe that Kobe Bryant was anointed to some level within, and I anointed carefully used, talking within the Luciferian side. He was elevated up to be revered within their circles as a god. Now, one thing that I keep coming around with this Luciferian belief system, and it's funny because a lot of people just can't get their head around the fact that everybody on the senior levels of elite are all Luciferians. There's no distinction. There's no okay, I'm not going to be, but I am going to be. It's like, if you're going to be up there, you're in the Luciferian cult. Yes. So the part that I find very, very interesting about this is there is this persistent belief that they will live forever. And so part of that is this, as if they don't think they'll ever die. And the more that you dig into this, I truly believe that his death it happened to occur on a date of a sacrifice, of one of the Luciferian group's sacrifice dates. I think personally he was sacrificed. I think that it was and I think it was a series of reasons. One is, you can't deny the fact that as this, and I'm going to use this loosely, this virus pandemic, I need to paint a little different landscape here real quickly, and I just need to kind of go into this space. The Luciferian side, there is something very dark that you were asking earlier about the house. There is something, in my opinion, very dark that assumes control of the soul. I don't know what it is. We can't see it, but it is I think just by prima facie evidence, they're worshiping spirits to come and possess them. So if that's what they're worshiping, it's like I always say, just if you take facts, if your enemy believes something so much that they live it, you better take notice, because if you're not having faith and spirituality with what you do, and your enemy's worshiping the Lucifer to fight you, you're going in unarmored. That's just a real simple way of looking at it, right? But they actually believe in this possession. So the more that I research, whatever this entities are, and I go to Genesis, when Christ crosses the ocean after the storm, and he steps onto the land, and he's met by the man who's possessed. And I love this story because it's a reminder when he talks in the Bible says legions. There's legions. That's several thousand, right, within him. So the spirits exist out here. And so the question is, what do they feed on? And my personal opinion is they feed on fear. So if we look at this current event, this turning of the world right now, where we're trying to bring light into the world. My personal opinion is that we are literally seeing there's another dimension of this war, which is a spiritual war that we cannot touch. But it's when they launched that virus, or at least that they announced it was a pandemic, there was a shockwave of fear that went across the globe. That's food, and that's energy. Fear is energy. It depends what if you can, and I think the dark side harvests it. I mean, when I say they literally feeds on it. So when I say that, when you tie the death of Kobe, which is to me a sacrifice to propel this, there's a whole series of things that happen leading up to the State of the Union speech. The release of the pandemic. We have the death of Kobe Bryant, which is a sacrifice of one of their gods to Lucifer, and that leads then to the worship of the gods of chaos at the Super Bowl event, which then leads into our Speaker of the House literally tearing the State of the Union speech as if to put a curse on the entire future of what that speech stated. These are fairly loose threads I'm tying together at this point, but as they say with intelligence, when you paint a picture with intelligence, if it starts to make a story that starts to line up, you need to pay attention to it. And that's pretty much what I'm doing here. As I look at this, and I'm looking at these connectors, and it's for a lot of people that are just not ready yet to go to that place and say, okay, wait a minute. You're telling me there's like demons walking around, and I'm like, yeah, I am, and I'm a guy that used to tell you that doesn't happen. So you might, I've changed my tack. And this is a guy, I say this too because, and I mean this proudly. I mean, I worked with in some very important parts of Department of Defense, and you don't walk around looking for demons. I'm just going to be clear, okay? But the more that I've dug into this type of fight and what we're really fighting right now, there's a dimension to this that is truly just not explainable by anything that we understand. It is so... and I give numbers of examples. One is just watching the mannerisms of the people on the leadership of the left. It's literally not human anymore. And I don't mean that like I'm not getting into some of the outer stuff like lizard people or things like that. What I'm really talking about is the loss of your soul. Right? It's like you've lost all your humanity. So we really can't look at them with normal eyes. And if they're acting and being so extreme, how could you not stand for a little girl, as an example? Right. It's much more than just saying you're going to protest a president. You were hissing. You're hissing at this girl. And that reminds me of something out of like a horror movie from Hollywood, right? Right. The Black Mamba. Back to Kobe. And there's some other connections with Kobe, and they're odd, but he's involved heavily with an education. He was involved heavily with an education group that was building digital education platforms for Chinese kids, ages, I think it's 5 to 8 is their target range. And it just so happens that one of the people on that board works at Stanford in the human psychology section, which happens to be one of the places where MK Ultra was incubated. And then you have to ask, why are they bringing Common Core over there, right? So these are some of the threads that I'm following right now. And you look at this, and this is where you start to realize the darkness of this, because it gets to the place where as we start to follow these connections where, and by the way, that one person, and I don't have the name of the company in front of me, but ultimately the name of the company links back to the owl, and the owl is the symbol for Lucifer on the cult side. I mean, there's every time you bump into this, and this is the part where the more you dig into these things, you just keep bumping into the same thing. You keep bumping into the use of the color red, or you keep bumping into transgenderism, or you keep bumping into the symbols of animals, owls, and the gold, of covering themselves in gold, which is a symbol of being a god. So you can't deny it. And their worship is, and I've said this the other day on a podcast, which is, as hard as this is going to be to take for many of faith, the left has more faith than the right. And when I say the left, the Luciferian left has more faith than those of faith. And I say that because every single thing they do is tied to a ritual. That's pretty frightening if you think about it.
Yes.
Right? I mean, their intent is so complete that there isn't a thing that Nancy Pelosi does in that speech that wasn't part of some sort of hex or curse. They can tell me all day long that she was crazy, but she's not crazy. That woman is intentional in what she's doing, just like her pens were intentional. My guess is those pens had some sort of the witch's curse on them or something, you know. And for me to even say this now, Bishop, and I'll be very honest with you, I mean, I wouldn't have touched this subject a year ago. And as I started to dig into this, and the deeper that I've gone into this, it's been mind-bending, because it's not you. The deeper you go, you're like, wait a minute, there we go again, another Luciferian cult. Oh, there we go again, another sacrifice ritual. Oh, there we go again, another symbol. It just keeps happening, and to get to the point where there are no coincidences here. These people are all connected at a certain level. And they've created a fabric, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier with the free will piece, which I think is so important, is they've constructed a world, effectively a matrix that we live within, of lies, to where everything they do is engineered towards having us give away something that they want, but we're doing it with our free will. So they're deceiving us. And deception doesn't violate the rules because they're not taking it. This is what I think is kind of interesting about our world. And this is my belief, and it's my belief that's come through a great deal of study and prayer and keeping and opening my eyes. But when we talk about sovereignty and free will, and then that primary directive, which is you cannot take that which is not given, you start to look at our world very differently. Right? And as we start to look out here in this amazing world, you start to realize all the agents of manipulation and how everything that we are doing is always about trying to tease us into doing something. And it goes literally back to the story of Eve and the apple. It's like, have that apple of knowledge, when in fact it was not supposed to be taken. And I'm just using I'm kind of over metaphor, kind of over exaggerating the metaphor. But for the point of discussion, it's twisting the truth again, so that you'll think it's something else, but you're going to do it by your free will, and you're going to give up your sovereignty in doing it. And that, honestly, when people talk about wanting to be free or wanting to be sovereign, we have no idea what that's like, to be quite frank. We've never lived, none of us have ever lived in a world where truly we have sovereignty and free will, and that everything we do is based on tithing forward, paying forward in some fashion, using God's gifts to pay forward, and to not taking anything but that which is given. I mean, there's tremendous change happening in our world on a positive side too, but from the darkness and the Luciferian left, they have mastered the ability to twist those things on its head. And constantly we're in this twist. It's like we were talking, I mentioned earlier, and I think you'd agree, is the abortion issue, which is unbelievable to me, because it's in plain sight. It's freedom of choice, which is your right to choose, and you can't take that which is not given. So you continue to tell them it's your choice, and so they want the abortion is more than just the aborting of the baby. Every time one of those happens, it's a worship for them towards their god of Baal or Moloch, and that's the backside to all of this, right? And I like to point out the the story when Moses goes to Mount Sinai. This to me it's really interesting in a close reading of the Bible. He goes up to Mount Sinai, and he's gone for 45 days, right? Comes back.
Yes.
And when he comes back, he gets so mad that he breaks the tablets. So the question is, what makes him so mad? And the reference of going back to their old ways of worship was Baal, the Moloch, which means they were sacrificing babies. The way which you did with Baal and Moloch, you would take your firstborn child and put it into the fire of the stomach of it was this bronze statue, or it was either a cow or it was some sort of a bull, and they'd have a fire going, and you would literally roast your roast your own child for this entity, because that would give the family good graces, and it would give the family blessings for great prosperity. So you get into some really crazy stuff when you start to look at modern people and you start to look at firstborns and what happens to them. And I'm telling you, it's very dark. It really is. And so you realize how persistent this has been over time. This literally goes back to the fallen. And if you've heard some of my podcasts, I refer to this regularly. I mean, it goes. I don't exclude myself. I'm not timid with reading things beyond scope. So as I say this, I think people should know this. I tread where others fear, and I think it's important. I've read almost every piece of work that Karl Marx has ever written. As an example, I've read many of the works from the Frankfurt School. I've read Rosenberg, which was a big radical. I've read works from Mao, Lenin, Trotsky, and the point is that if you're not taking the time to know your enemy, you're never going to really know what they're about, right? So this is important, and so like when I say this, when I look at the Bible, I have no problem going back to the Book of Enoch. In fact, I argue that the Book of Enoch is suspiciously excluded because it's referenced there. It's referenced in Genesis. So why is it excluded if it's that important? As someone asked me the other day, is it an anointed text? And I said, I can't answer that, whether it's an anointed text, because that hasn't been shown to me. But what I do know is Genesis is an anointed text, and it references Enoch. So if it references Enoch, why would God not want me to read Enoch? I'm just curious. It doesn't reference Enoch by name. I mean, it references the fallen, and it references specific things that are in Enoch. So be clear about that. But my point is like, why then would God not expect me to read that? Right? It's just, there's just some fundamental logic here. So I think as we do that, we become, my personal opinion is as we do that, we become, this is something I was saying the other day in one of my podcasts. Actually, it was a tweet I put up, and I was playing with some Q stuff. And what I was doing is, as I said, if we found, and I basically to take the Q part out, but just to make a point, if we found out that there was aliens, if we found out that there was time travel, if we found out that cloning technology was real, if we found out that the Bible had been manipulated by the Catholic Church, what would that mean to you? And for me, this is what it means to me. It simply means that I would go to my center of gravity, which is prayer, faith, and God. It's that simple. Yes. Nothing changes. Right? At the end of the day, I mean, it's okay, so our world changes, but my relationship with God doesn't change. And this is where I think we get very confused. And in that process, we stumble a lot, in my opinion, because I hear this a lot, and there's no judgment here, but it's we can't read that. It's like, no, we can read it. It doesn't mean you have to believe it. Doesn't mean you have to take anything from it, but yeah, we can read it, and it's okay, because at the end of the day, and we all hit this point. We all struggle with, okay, what does that mean? And so what does it mean? It means when we do that, we stop, get on our knees, pray. Wow. However you function in prayer, that's mine. And we talk to God. We just put it to God. This is me. Okay, I'm just being very candid. I've vented at moments pretty harshly to God. I openly say that, and this is how I see that. It's not like I'm admonishing God, but if I'm completely lost in something, I'm like, man, you got to help me out here. And those aren't always easy moments. There's two key things I think that are important here. I've shown my heart to be true of what I feel because he sees it anyway. I'm not trying to hide it. And two, when I come to that realization, I'm humble enough to turn and say, thank you. And I was wrong, but I didn't see it. But thank you for allowing me to speak, right? And I just think those are such important points. None of that process is to use the terms that we like that are so used, like fear and respect to God. Never has that lost. But fear and respect to his ominous power and to who he is also doesn't mean that I just become a drone and walk off a cliff. He doesn't want that from me. He wants me to be, with my own sovereignty and free will, to return to him, to become part of him again by my choice. And in doing that, every step of the way, as we move forward, and I step into that space, and I'm trying to use the gifts he's given me, what those are, and learn more as I go. And those are difficult paths, as you know very well, because that doesn't always translate to the type of work you expected or the cash flow that someone else would offer you. But it's not about that. It's truly about it's about a walk in life that is pure in a relationship with him, and that puts us on that trajectory to get back to him. And that, to me, is the most powerful thing in the world. And I mean, our world could literally transform in a completely different way with technologies or whatever. But at the end of the day, as long as I have that azimuth with me of sovereignty, free will, choosing to return to him, using my gifts, and in every step of my path trying to pay forward to create a positive fabric within the universe, I don't think I'm going to do too wrong at the end of the day. And
my friend,
I think that
you hit a nerve with me. Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Oh.
No. I was just going to close by saying, I hope good nerves.
Oh, good nerves. Oh, no, these are good nerves. Oh, no, these are good nerves. And you coming back on, man of God, you're going to be a regular with us. Go right ahead. Oh, I'm so excited.
Well, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
This is a wonderful talk. We are.
Yes,
but you know what's neat? I mean, we come back full circle with the left, and I think when we get down to some simple foundations of what we are and what we're trying to achieve, and probably one of the most overread sections of the Bible, and at the same time, most misapplied. So I want to be clear here, is Ephesians 6:10 through 18. And we always hear it, the armor of God, the armor of God. Okay, got it. Okay, I got it. But what does that really, really mean, right? And if you really follow those fundamentals of, I'm living by sovereignty and free will, by my own choice, I'm coming back to God. I'm trying to use my gifts to go forward and make a better world by paying forward with what I do. So a portion of what I do is tithed to something, to using those gifts, which is a positive impact into the world. And I'm bringing myself back. And if you're tying into that prayer, you really have just created your armor. And so when you think about life that simply, what can the left really do to you? And I think that's the biggest, when you talk about destructing and tearing apart the Luciferian left, if we obsess on it, we give them power. But if we focus on God, what do they have? They don't have anything.
That's it. And you may mention that the book of Enoch, sometime ago, months ago, right? It might have been maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and I was going through, I believe we're on chapter 29, maybe we'll be in chapter 30 in the book of Enoch. I've been teaching my girlfriend, right, concerning the book of Enoch. And there's a roster of angels, right, that Enoch reveals. Actually, there's 200 fallen angels, right? They're called the Nephilims, or what they call, and I believe Colby was involved in that too, because the Luciferians, they believe that they are the blood of the gods. But that's another topic for another day. But out of the 200 angels that are fallen, that's it. 20 of them are only mentioned in the first few chapters of Enoch. Well, 20, it's interesting, is the 10% of 200. So even darkness has a typing system. But I was going through the roster of the angels, and if you dissect every name of the fallen angels, just the 20 that I may mention in the book of Enoch, the prophet and the seer, and every name and the definition of every name of every fallen angel who are now called demons, every definition of each and every name, if you connect all the definitions of each name together, it represents a hidden code. And I'll have to send you that information. It represents a hidden code, which represents the cognitive consciousness of Lucifer, Satan, who is the devil, his plan to genetically manipulate mankind. Right, and I believe Colby got himself involved into something. And to our Global Spiritual Revolution partners, if you get an opportunity, go to Time Life Magazine's front cover online, and it shows Kobe Bryant, and it shows his back, right? Him almost bowing with his head, and he has his left hand, man of God, behind his back, right, with his left hand that is behind his back in a straight palm. That's a high-level occultic Masonic symbol and sign. Remember at the again, you're hitting great nerves with you, man. I remember during the death of Kobe Bryant, there was a press conference, right, with the LA County Sheriff's Department. And to all of our Global Spiritual Revolution partners, if you get an opportunity, just go on YouTube. And again, I'm not trying to pick something that doesn't exist, man of God, but you notice how all of the sheriffs, right, the deputy sheriffs that's behind, whether it's somebody from the Department of Transportation or the representing the United States government or somebody that's speaking, all of the sheriffs got their hands in the folded arm position around their waist. Do you know, man of God, that is one of the high master mason positions. And mind you, those sheriffs may not even be masons, okay? So I don't want our listeners to go crazy, oh, Bishop is saying they're masons. No, but all of them have their hands folded around their waist, right? And everything is not by accident. I believe in detail, man of God. And I believe Colby was 41 when he died. His last game, he came out at 4.1 seconds. Back in April of 2016, he didn't want to come out. They forced him to come out, right? There's a commercial. I know that you know this, man of God, that he's in this commercial with Kanye West. Kanye West is in this helicopter. Colby is holding a basketball with a timer on outside of this basketball, right? And when the clock hits 4.1 second, even though it goes down to 4.0, but when he hits 4.1 second, Colby lifts his head and throws the basketball toward and destroys the helicopter, right? And then 41 days.
I've seen that video. It's powerful.
Did you see that? Oh, that's powerful.
Yes, it's I continue, but yes, it is.
Yeah, and then 41 days after Kobe's death would be Shaquille O'Neal's birthday. And again, it might be just coincidence, man of God, but when it comes to the Luciferian deep state, nothing is by accident. I was saying on the show, and I'm going to, forgive me for running my mouth, but you caused me to be so excited. I was on a weekly program on another radio show, podcast the other night, and the other day was Crowdsource the Truth with Jason Goodman, and I was dissecting the name of the helicopter, Sikorsky, right? The Sikorsky 76B. Now, that name goes back to a Russian Khazarian Masonic person by the name of Igor Sikorsky, right? And to all of our listeners, if you get an opportunity, go on Wikipedia and just type in Igor, capital I-G-O-R, Sikorsky, capital S-I-K-O-R-S-K-Y. And you go down to his second picture below his main picture. It shows a 1914 picture of him, man of God, with his right hand inside of his jacket pocket, with both his thumb and his pinky outside of the jacket pocket, which represents the horn of Lucifer. So nothing is by accident, man of God. Kobe got himself into some dark arts. And what is the mind of God showing you in last minute? And we got to have you back, man of God, as a regular. Go right ahead.
Well, thank you very much. I think, first of all, I'm seeing this picture you mentioned. It's pretty amazing, and I agree with you. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, is that the Luciferian left lives their entire life in a form of worship and intentional living. And I think this is a very big lesson for all of those of faith. Our faith is, because we have free will, and this goes back to the fallen, and ultimately what we can come to understand is the dispute between, loosely, I'm not going to use the right terms, but in modern terminology, Lucifer and God. And it comes down to the argument over sovereignty and free will, because Lucifer wanted to tell people how to worship, and God said no, they had to choose. I'm oversimplifying, but that's essentially the gist of it. So my point of that is, it's very important because we see it manifest. We have the right to choose, because in that way, then we come to God pure and complete by our own choice. Lucifer says, you must worship me in this manner. And so the process of the Luciferian left is always extremely intentional. As you stated, there is nothing they do by accident. And we should take that very seriously, because that's a very powerful place to be. And if we were to use the same intention with our own life, imagine the power we would have to manifest through faith and light. Wouldn't that be incredible?
Oh, my God. And, man of God, you and I are going to have to, we would love to have you back, man of God, every month if you can, because I absolutely love the flow, how the hand of the Lord is upon you, man of God. And you and I will definitely talk off when the broadcast is over, either tonight or tomorrow, because you've taught me so much that I thought I knew, but I absolutely did not know. It was a great honor sitting at your feet tonight. And to all of our Global Spiritual Revolution partners, remember those LA County sheriffs, with their hands. And again, I don't want our listeners to run with this, but it's so interesting. According to the document called the Codex, capital Codex Magica, that one of the Masonic hand signs is the folding of the arms around the waist. And I did some deep studies, man. Again, I know we got to close out here, that the Friday before Kobe's death, right? Somebody was buying millions of dollars worth of stock in the Bryant Stable mutual fund. Okay, now to our Global Spiritual Revolution partners, if you go on Bryant Stable, Stibel, just like they did, I believe, a day before 9/11, someone was buying an enormous amount of stock, right, on the Friday before Kobe's death, because we know the stock markets are not open on the weekend. So thereby someone made a killing that Monday, because the stock of Bryant Stable went down tremendously. And I want us to talk about that next time. And again, I'm not saying that this was the cause or somebody at Bryant Stable was behind it. Kobe said, I'm not. And our responsibility here, Brother Scott, you have blown my mind, man of God, because often, and you'll get to know me when I say, boy, you hit a nerve with me, those are great nerves. And you have opened the door that causes me to go to the next level in Jesus Christ. And, sir, I want to thank you. And can you come back and be with us at least once a month? I would love to have an opportunity to sit at your feet again in Christ, my friend.
Well, Bishop, I would be honored, and I thank you very much. I can't tell you, it's an incredible blessing, so thank you. I've enjoyed this conversation very much. I enjoy the exchange, and I think that just from what we've seen, there's a great deal that we can unpack together and really shine some light on some very difficult and dark subjects for people. And I just do want to caveat with what you said. We're trying to build a picture of something that's very hidden. So just as you referenced with the point of the sheriffs, it doesn't mean to react, but it does mean to start looking. And it does mean to start paying attention. And the more that we go there, the more that we become stronger in our faith, stronger with God, stronger with Christ, and we're able to walk deeper into those places. That's truly, for me, the meaning of Ephesians 6:10-18, is that as we get stronger, then through our prayer, through our knowledge key, and through our awakening with God, then we're able to walk into places that we would not have been before, because we're not doubting ourselves. We're not walking with fear. And I think that's a big thing. And there's no reason to live in darkness. This is a time to really open our eyes and to see what truth looks like.
My friend, thank you so much, and we would love to have you back as a regular, at least once a month. And man of God, can you give information to our listeners how they can financially support you and just sow into your ministry and into your powerful podcast there on YouTube?
Well, yes, thank you very much. So my podcast at this point, and there'll be a lot of expansion on this over the next month or so, but at this point, you can find them on YouTube at Bards of War, on YouTube at Bards of War on BitChute, and then on Twitter, it's Bards of War. There's two ways to support. I have a film available, which is a film from when I was in Afghanistan. That film is available at bardsofwarfilm.com, bardsofwarfilm.com. It's $9.95. It's a digital download. And if you choose just to donate, you can use the PayPal, which is paypal.me/bardsofwar, just to do a direct donation, or you can go to the BitChute channel, which is BitChute and Bards of War, and you can use the PayPal button there. I've been asked to set up some other, like a Patreon, and I'll be doing that coming up, but for now, that's what it is, and I'll keep you updated, Bishop, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much, my friend. And to our Global Spiritual Revolution partners, I will be a guest on Brother Scott's powerful podcast entitled The Bards of War on March the 18th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we'll give you more information in the weeks to come. Brother Scott, it was such a great honor again, sir, sitting at your feet in Christ. I love you so much, man of God. I highly honor you. You are a man's man. You're a great patriot. And thank you for gracing us here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio.
Bishop, thank you very much. It's been a very humbling experience here. I'm blessed to be here, and I thank you for your graciousness and your deep knowledge. And I look forward to having more great conversations with you. So thank you, and God bless.
I receive that in Jesus' name. And that was the Honorable Mr. Scott Kesterson of the Bards of War Ministries. Go to his website, bardsofwarfilm.com, Bards, capital BARDS, of warfilm.com. Go to his YouTube channel, powerful podcast. Great gift. Also, a tremendous gift of teaching, articulating the mind of God, and just type in Bards of War Podcast. Again, beloved, Bards of War Podcast. Go to his website, bardsofwarfilm.com. Bless him financially, to all of our Global Spiritual Revolution partners. And it was such a great honor to have all three of these great men of God on tonight. The Honorable Pastor Greg Locke during the first half hour of the broadcast. The Honorable Pastor Greg Young, who was with us from the 7:30 p.m. time point up until around 10 to 15 after. And just to put a cherry on top of this powerful broadcast tonight, the Honorable Mr. Scott Kesterson of the bardsofwarfilm.com, bardsofwarfilm.com, a true patriot, a true man of God, a man's man, and for this 21st century. And to all of our Global Spiritual Revolution partners, we're going to have this uploaded on social media tomorrow morning and also on YouTube. And we will definitely send Brother Scott a copy of that so he can upload that on his YouTube channel. God bless you, everyone. We will see you on next week. We got some powerful guests upcoming. We got Kanye West upcoming the 3rd Thursday in March. We got Candace Owens coming in April, and so we got a lot. We got Dr. C.L. Bryant coming on, and so we got a lot of powerful guests upcoming here in the next few months. We will see you next week here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. Good night from New York City.